My wife betrayed me with my ex-best friend, stole our $200, $0 inheritance, and now they're trying to claim half of our house in a bitter legal battle over everything we built. I still can't believe I trusted her. I never thought I'd end up here, honestly. My life was supposed to be simple, married to the woman I loved, building our future together. We had everything: a nice house, a good job, a bit of savings, and plans for the kids. Her name was Lisa, and she seemed perfect at first. But looking back now, I realize how many little signs I ignored, how many red flags I brushed off. The first real hint was when she started acting weird about her phone, secretive texts, always keeping it close, hiding it when I came into the room. I told myself she was just being cautious, maybe worried about privacy. But then I noticed her getting more distant, less interested in intimacy, and more interested in her phone when she thought I wasn't looking. It all came crashing down one night when I decided to surprise her with dinner after a long day at work. I got home early, expecting to find her in the living room, maybe watching TV or reading. Instead, I heard muffled voices and the unmistakable sound of someone else's laughter coming from our bedroom. My heart started pounding. I quietly moved closer, peering through the slightly open door. There she was, Lisa, my wife, in bed with someone I'd never even met. It was clear they'd been doing more than just talking. Her clothes were half off, and they looked deep into each other's eyes like they were the only two people in the world. I froze, unable to believe what I was seeing. My mind raced. How long had this been going on? Who was this guy? My ex-best friend Mark was there too. What the hell? I trusted both of them so much. I had just a second to process everything before Lisa looked up and saw me standing there. Her face twisted into a sneer, like I'd just interrupted her in some kind of game. She quickly grabbed her shirt and tried to cover herself, but I already knew. Everything I thought was real was a lie. That moment marked the end of my trust, the start of a nightmare I'd never anticipated. That night I could sleep. My mind kept replaying the scene over and over. I felt numb, betrayed, like I'd been punched in the gut. How could she do this? How could she lie so effortlessly about everything? She'd always been bitchy, yes, but I never thought she was capable of something this cruel. When I confronted her the next day, her excuses were as flimsy as ever. She said I was overreacting, that it was just sex, that Mark meant nothing, that she was unhappy but didn't want to hurt me. But I knew better. I saw the way she looked at him, the way she touched him. That wasn't just a fling, it was something deeper, something dangerous. The emotional hit me hard. I went from furious to heartbroken to feeling completely lost. I couldn't understand how she could betray me like this, how she could lie about everything. I kept asking myself, how did I miss all the signs? Was I blind? Did I just want to believe in us so badly that I ignored what was right in front of me? Every moment I spent with her suddenly felt like a lie, a facade. I felt betrayed not just by her but by myself for trusting her so blindly. I also felt stupid for putting so much faith in someone who clearly didn't deserve it. The hardest part was realizing that my entire life, the money we had saved, the plans we made, none of it seemed to matter anymore. It was all tainted now, stained by her lies and her betrayal. I knew I had to decide what to do next. Do I fight for the marriage? Do I walk away? Do I try to understand why she did this? I didn't have any clear answers, just a deep sense of anger and loss. I also had to confront the fact that she was already trying to spin her lies, trying to make me doubt what I saw. She claimed it was just sex, that she was unhappy but still loved me, that Mark was just a mistake. But I knew better. I knew that her words were just a way to manipulate the situation, to keep me from walking out. I realized I couldn't keep living in this fog of lies, not anymore. I had to make a choice, something I didn't want to do but knew I had. That's when I started thinking about revenge, not just on her but on Mark too. They thought they could get away with it, take everything we built and walk free. But I wasn't going to let that happen. I decided I'd get what was rightfully mine, our money, our house, our dignity. I wasn't going to let her ruin everything we fought for without a fight. I had to plan carefully because I knew she'd try to lie her way out of anything. I had evidence now, enough to make her regret ever crossing me. But I also knew that the road ahead wouldn't be easy. Betrayal cuts deep, and trust, once broken, is hard to repair. Still, I was determined to take back control, to show her that I wasn't the fool she thought I was. I don't know how this story will end, but I do know I'm not going down without a fight. I've got plans and I've got nothing to lose anymore. The betrayal has left me, but also stronger. And if there's one thing I've learned, it's this. Never trust blindly, especially when someone shows you their true colors. After that night, my mind was a whirlwind of rage, confusion, and a creeping sense of betrayal that refused to fade. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Lisa's face, her sneer, Mark's stupid grin, and the way they looked at each other like they had just uncovered some secret world I was never meant to see. I needed to get some distance, to think clearly. So I started by gathering evidence, not just to confront her, but to ensure I had proof if things got ugly. The first thing I did was check our bank accounts. I knew Lisa was sneaky, and I suspected she'd try to hide her tracks. Sure enough, I found some strange transactions, small amounts here and there, going into accounts I didn't recognize. She'd been funneling money, probably to cover her tracks or maybe to set herself up somewhere new. I also found out she had been secretly talking to a lawyer, planning to claim half of our house and the inheritance we had received just a few months earlier. That inheritance 200 from my grandparents' estate was supposed to be our safety net, a cushion for our future. Now I realized she'd been plotting to steal it all along. I decided to dig deeper. I hired a private investigator, someone I knew from work, an ex-cop who owed me a favor. Over the next few days, I got intel on Lisa's whereabouts, her meetings, and her interactions with Mark. The guy was a piece of work, always had some sob story about how he was just helping her, that they were just friends. Yeah, right. I saw the messages she'd deleted, the secret calls, the times she met him late at night. It was all there. I also discovered she'd been working with a lawyer, some shady guy who was helping her craft a plan to claim our house and get her hands on the inheritance. Meanwhile, Lisa kept lying. She told everyone she was just stressed, that I was paranoid, that I was overreacting. She threw tantrums, called me crazy, and accused me of spying on her. That woman had a mouth on her, bitchy, manipulative, always spinning some story to make herself look innocent. But I saw through it. I knew her game now. She was trying to spin her way out, to make me doubt what I knew was true. That's why I kept quiet, gathering everything I needed, waiting for the right moment to strike. One night I caught her in a lie that was the last straw. She told me she was going out with her friends, that she needed a break from everything. But I tracked her to a hotel downtown where she was meeting Mark. They were in a suite, laughing, drinking, and clearly planning their next move. I sat in my car outside for a while, watching her through the window. It was a sickening sight. My wife, the woman I loved, betraying me with my ex-best friend. The betrayal was so raw, so intense, it felt like a punch to the chest. That moment, standing outside that hotel, I made a decision. I wasn't going to let her get away with this. I'd already lost a part of my trust, but I still had my dignity. I decided I'd fight for what's mine, our house, our money, our future, and my reputation. I knew they thought they could just walk all over me and take everything. But I wasn't going to let that happen. I had evidence now, enough to turn the tables. I also started talking to a lawyer, someone who specialized in divorce and property disputes. I wanted to be prepared because I knew Lisa would try to manipulate the legal system to her advantage. Meanwhile, I kept my cool around her. I didn't confront her directly again until I had everything in place. I played it smart, acting like nothing was wrong but secretly planning my next move. I knew she'd try to spin her lies, so I stayed silent, gathering more proof. I also secretly recorded some of her conversations with Mark, just snippets, enough to show she was planning to leave me to take everything. It was a brutal game, but I knew I had to be strategic. The last thing I wanted was to look desperate or emotional. I needed to be calm, calculated, and ready to fight. The more I uncovered, the angrier I got. How could she do this? How could she betray everything we built? I kept asking myself that, replaying every moment, every sign I missed. I thought about the inheritance, the house, the future I'd planned. Everything was on the line. And this wasn't just about the money, it was about respect, dignity, and trust. She had taken all of that and thrown it away for some cheap affair and a quick buck. I realized I wasn't just fighting for my property anymore. I was fighting for my life, my sanity, and whatever shred of self-respect I had left. I started to plan my legal strategy, knowing that once I filed for divorce, she'd try to drag things out, lie her way through every step. That's why I needed all my evidence ready: texts, bank statements, recordings, witness statements. I was determined to come out of this with what was rightfully mine and to make her pay for what she did. I also reached out to some close friends and family, not to her but to get support, because I knew this was going to be one of the hardest battles I'd ever face. I had no illusions. I knew the road ahead would be messy, emotional, and full of surprises. But I also knew I wasn't going to let her destroy me or everything I worked for. As I sat in my house that night, staring at the walls that once felt so safe, I felt a strange mixture of anger and resolve. I was hurt, yes, but I was also determined. This betrayal had shattered my world, but it had also awakened something inside me, an urge to fight back, to reclaim what's mine and to make her regret ever crossing me. I didn't know exactly how it would end, but I knew this. I was done being the victim. From now on, I was taking control, and I was going to make sure she paid for what she did, one way or another. The days that followed were a blur of planning and emotional turmoil. I threw myself into the legal side of things, making sure every piece of evidence was organized and ready to be presented. I knew Lisa was already spinning her web of lies, trying to paint herself as the victim, so I had to be meticulous. Every text message, every bank transaction, every secret call, nothing could be left unaccounted for. My lawyer, a sharp guy named David, told me I had a strong case, especially with the evidence I'd collected. Still, I knew Lisa wouldn't go down without a fight, and Mark was just as ruthless. I had to stay one step ahead. Meanwhile, Lisa's behavior became increasingly bitchy and erratic. She'd throw tantrums, accuse me of spying, and act like I was the crazy one. She'd scream about how I was paranoid, how she loved me, and how I was just jealous. Honestly, I'd never seen her like that before. It was like watching a different person, someone who'd been hiding behind her manipulative smile all along. She'd lie about where she was, who she was with, and what her plans were. I caught her in a dozen little lies, and each one made me more certain that she was planning something bigger. One night, I decided to follow her again. I had a hunch she was meeting Mark somewhere. Sure enough, I saw her sneaking out of the house late at night, slipping into her car. I tailed her at a distance, trying not to be obvious. She drove to a rundown motel on the outskirts of town. I parked nearby, watching her go inside. I didn't need to see more. I already knew what was happening. My stomach clenched with anger. These two thought they could just betray me, take everything, and walk away. Not a chance. I snapped some pictures of her coming out the next morning, just to have proof if she tried to deny it later. At the same time, I uncovered more about her plans to claim the house and inheritance. She hired a lawyer, a sleazy guy named Carter, who was known for helping clients manipulate the legal system. I found out she'd been working on a settlement, trying to get half of everything, even threatening to sue me for divorce if I didn't agree. That's when I realized she was serious about taking everything I'd worked for. I also learned she'd been secretly transferring money into accounts in her name, trying to hide her assets. I felt like I was in a war, and every step she took was a calculated move to screw me over. What really pushed me over the edge was when I discovered she'd been secretly talking to Mark about how to split the money and the house. I found a bunch of texts where they discussed dividing everything fairly, but I knew their version of fair was just her trying to steal my inheritance and keep the house. I also found out she'd been planning to leave me for Mark, move out, and start a new life with him. It made me wonder if she ever loved me at all, or if I was just a pawn in her game. The thought that she'd betrayed me so deeply, so intentionally, left a bitter taste in my mouth. I decided I needed to confront her directly, but I wanted to do it on my terms. I set up a meeting with her lawyer, Carter, under the pretense of wanting to settle quickly. I wanted to see what she was planning, to hear her side and maybe catch her in a lie. When she arrived, she looked nervous but tried to play it cool. She kept saying she just wanted what was fair, that she never meant to hurt me, that she loved me. Yeah, right. I looked her right in the eyes and told her I knew everything. I laid out all the evidence I had, her secret meetings, her transfers, her plans with Mark. Her reaction was classic Lisa: deflect, deny, and then turn the blame on me. She started crying, saying I was paranoid, that I was ruining everything because I didn't trust her. She said she was just trying to protect herself, that she deserved a fair share, but I wasn't buying it. I told her I had enough of her lies, that I knew about the affair, the money she was trying to steal, and her plans to leave. She looked stunned for a moment, then her bitchy side came out. She yelled, called me crazy, said I was just jealous of Mark, that I was overreacting. But I had the proof and I wasn't backing down. That confrontation was a turning point. I saw her true face: bitchy, manipulative, and selfish. It confirmed what I already knew. She was trying to screw me over and start fresh with Mark. I realized that if I didn't act fast, she'd succeed in taking everything I built. I decided then and there that I'd fight her in court, no matter how long it took. I also started planning how to protect my assets, including hiring a forensic accountant to trace her money transfers. I knew she'd try to hide everything, but I was determined to find every penny. At the same time, I started reaching out to friends and family for support. I didn't tell them everything. Some of the details were too painful, but I needed people I could trust. I also began to realize how much this betrayal had affected me emotionally. I felt hurt, angry, and betrayed, but I also felt a strange sense of clarity. This wasn't just about the money or the house anymore. It was about reclaiming my dignity. I knew I had to stay strong, keep my emotions in check, and fight with everything I had. The hardest part was knowing that Lisa would probably never admit she was wrong or take responsibility. She'd try to spin her story, manipulate the legal system, and make me look like the bad guy. But I was ready. I'd prepare every document, every piece of evidence, and every argument. I'd be relentless. Because at the end of the day, I knew I deserved better than this betrayal. I deserved to have what was mine, what we built together, without her sneaking around, lying, and plotting to steal it all. I was tired of feeling like a fool. Now I was ready to fight to be the man I once was: strong, determined, and unbroken. The legal battle started faster than I expected. Once I filed for divorce and contested her claims to the house and inheritance, Lisa's bitchy side really came out. She went into full damage control mode, trying to spin her lies even more aggressively. She claimed I was controlling, paranoid, and that I was just jealous of Mark. Her lawyer, Carter, played along, trying to paint me as the unreasonable husband. It was disgusting to see how far she was willing to go just to keep the money and the house. Meanwhile, I stayed calm, sticking to the evidence I had collected. I knew that if I let her manipulate the court, I'd lose everything: my home, my savings, the future I'd envisioned. Lisa's lawyer tried to argue that I was overreacting, that the affair was just a mistake, and that she deserved a fair share of everything. She kept crying, acting helpless, and trying to make herself look like the victim. But I had proof: screenshots of her texts with Mark, bank statements showing her secret transfers, and recordings of her planning her escape. I presented everything during the hearings, and it was clear that she was trying to hide her assets and her betrayal. Every time she lied on the stand, I felt a strange mix of rage and frustration. How could she sit there and pretend she didn't do anything wrong? The court hearings dragged on for weeks. Lisa would show up, bitchy and defiant, trying to intimidate me with her tears and her fake innocence. She'd say she loved me, that she was sorry, that she'd never do it again. But I wasn't buying it anymore. I'd seen her true colors. I knew she was a manipulative, selfish woman who was willing to do anything to keep what she wanted. I had my own witnesses: friends who knew about her affair, my accountant who confirmed the transfers, and my private investigator who provided additional proof of her meetings with Mark. All of it painted a clear picture. She was trying to steal my inheritance, claim our house, and cut me out completely. The most intense moment came when Lisa's lawyer tried to argue that I was emotionally unstable, that my suspicions were unfounded, and that I was trying to sabotage her. I felt my blood boil. I stood up, looked directly at her lawyer, and told him that I had all the evidence to prove her lies. I said I was tired of her playing the victim, tired of her lies, and tired of her trying to rewrite history. I told the court that I wanted what was rightfully mine: our house, our savings, and the inheritance. I made it clear that I wouldn't be bullied or manipulated anymore. During one of the court sessions, Lisa snapped at me in front of everyone. She called me paranoid and crazy, trying to make everyone believe I was the problem. Her voice was shrill, her face twisted with anger. I looked her in the eyes and calmly told her that I had enough of her lies. I revealed some of the recordings I had secretly made. Her planning to leave me, her discussions with Mark about dividing the money, her attempts to hide assets. The judge was surprised, and I could see the shift in the courtroom. It was like finally everything was coming to light. Meanwhile, Lisa's actions became even more bitchy and aggressive. She tried to threaten me, saying she'd ruin me financially if I didn't back down. She threw tantrums in court, calling me names, accusing me of trying to control her. Her lawyer even tried to get the judge to dismiss some of my evidence, claiming it was obtained unlawfully. But I had everything properly documented, and I made sure every piece of evidence was admissible. I knew I was on solid ground, and I refused to let her manipulate the system. Throughout this process, I felt a mix of exhaustion and determination. I had spent so many nights lying awake, feeling betrayed and helpless. But now I was fighting back, fighting for what was mine. I realized how much her betrayal had affected me, trust, security, even my self-esteem. But I also learned a lot about myself. I learned that I could be strong, that I could stand up for myself, even when everything seemed to be falling apart. I learned that sometimes the truth needs to be fought for and that justice doesn't come easy. Looking back, I see how much I've changed through this whole ordeal. I used to be naive, trusting blindly. Now I'm more cautious, more guarded. But I also feel more confident. I know I did the right thing by fighting for my rights, by not letting her manipulate me anymore. The court case isn't over yet, but I can see the tide turning in my favor. I've got enough evidence to prove her lies, to show her true character. And that gives me hope that, in the end, I'll get what's rightfully mine, our house, the inheritance, and the dignity she tried to strip away from me. The final stages of the legal battle felt like walking through fire. I knew Lisa was desperate, and her bitchy side only intensified. She'd been trying to spin every story possible, claiming I was an unstable, jealous husband who was trying to ruin her life. But I had the evidence, and I had the truth. Each court date, I saw her attempt to manipulate the system, to twist facts, to paint herself as the innocent victim. Her lawyer, Carter, kept pushing her narrative, but I wasn't going to let her get away with it. My lawyer, David, was relentless. He had everything lined up, every piece of evidence ready to go. One of the most intense moments came when Lisa unexpectedly brought her own witnesses, some friends she claimed could testify to her good character and her love for me. But I had my own witnesses, people who knew the real Lisa, the one who lied, cheated, and schemed. I called my sister, who about Lisa's manipulative behavior and how she'd been planning her escape for months. I also brought in the private investigator, who provided recordings and photos of Lisa meeting Mark in secret. The courtroom was electric, every piece of evidence building the case against her. Lisa's lawyer tried to discredit my evidence, claiming it was obtained unlawfully or that I was just jealous. But my lawyer shot back with facts. The recordings were made legally, and the bank statements were straightforward proof of her transfers. I watched her face twist in frustration as her lies crumbled. She kept insisting she loved me, that it was just a fling, that everything would be okay if I just forgave her. But I knew better. I saw the truth in her eyes. She didn't love me anymore. She only wanted what she could steal. The turning point came during the final hearing, when my lawyer argued that Lisa had no real claim to the inheritance or the house. We presented the evidence showing she had been planning to leave me and take everything, including the inheritance, which was legally ours until she tried to claim it. My lawyer emphasized that her actions were manipulative and that she'd lied throughout the process. The judge listened carefully, asking questions, scrutinizing every document, every recording. It was clear I had the upper hand, especially since I had everything documented, and Lisa, in her typical bitchy fashion, tried to storm out of the courtroom after the judge announced the verdict. But the judge called her back, warning her about perjury and manipulation. I could see her trying to hold back her anger, her frustration boiling over. She shouted that she'd appeal, that she'd make sure I paid for this. But I was done playing her game. I felt a strange mix of relief and exhaustion. I had fought tooth and nail, and I'd won most of what I was fighting for. The judge ruled in my favor, awarding me full custody of the house, denying Lisa's claims to the inheritance, and ordering her to pay back the money she transferred illegally. I felt an overwhelming wave of relief wash over me. It was like finally breathing after holding my breath for months, but I also felt emptiness. All the trust I'd once had was shattered. Everything I believed in was turned upside down by her betrayal. Still, I knew I had to move forward, to rebuild my life and leave this nightmare behind. The aftermath was Lisa was furious, screaming and cursing at me outside the courthouse, still trying to spin her lies. Mark was nowhere to be seen, probably hiding, knowing he'd been caught red-handed. I felt a strange sense of victory, but also a deep sadness. I'd lost my marriage, my trust, and a part of myself. But I'd also gained clarity. I saw who she really was, the manipulative, selfish woman who betrayed everything I stood for. I realized I couldn't let her destroy me, not anymore. In the weeks that followed, I started to pick up the pieces. I sold the house, gave Lisa her share of the inheritance, and moved into a new apartment. I cut all contact with her and Mark. I focused on my work, my friends, and my own healing. It wasn't easy. There were nights I'd lie awake, replaying everything, wondering if I'd done enough, if I could have saved the marriage. But deep down, I knew I'd fought for what was right, and I refused to let her win by tearing me down. I learned that trust is fragile and betrayal can come from the people you least expect. But I also learned that strength comes from within, that even after the worst betrayals, you can pick yourself up and start over. Looking back, I realized that this experience has changed me forever. I'm more cautious now, more guarded, but also more aware of the signs I ignored. I wish I could say I'd do things differently, but I know I won't make that mistake again. My biggest lesson is that betrayal cuts deep, but resilience is stronger. I want anyone reading this to know that no matter how bad it gets, you can come out the other side. Justice might be slow, but it's worth fighting for. And sometimes the only way to truly reclaim your life is to stand your ground, no matter how bitchy or manipulative the other side gets. Because in the end, you owe yourself that much. It's been a few months now since everything finally settled, and honestly, I still feel the weight of it all. The betrayal cut so deep that I thought I'd never fully recover. But I've come to realize something important. I survived. I fought for what was rightfully mine, and I won. Not just the house or the inheritance, but a sense of clarity I hadn't had before. I see now how dangerous trust can be when misplaced, and I've learned to be more cautious, more guarded. But I've also learned that I'm stronger than I thought, strong enough to stand up against manipulation, lies, and bitchy games. Looking back, I can't help but feel a strange mix of relief and bitterness. Relief because I finally got my life back, because I refused to let her, Mark, or her lawyer drag me down. Bitterness because I lost my wife, my partner, my future. That betrayal shattered everything I thought was solid, but I refused to let it define me. I've started rebuilding, slowly, painfully, but surely. I've taken back control of my life, and I'm making sure I never get like that again. The one thing I keep telling myself is that I'm done with her lies. I'm done with the bitchy manipulations, the sneaky transfers, the secret meetings. I learned that people can be so good at hiding who they really are. Lisa proved that. But I also learned the importance of standing firm and fighting for what's right, even when it feels like the world is against you. Her betrayal was a wake-up call, and I won't forget it. I'll be more cautious with who I trust, and I'll never ignore the red flags again. As for her, I don't know where she is now or what she's doing. Honestly, I don't care. I hope she's finally realized that her actions have consequences, that cheating, lying, and trying to steal from someone you once loved doesn't lead to happiness. Mark, I hope he's feeling the same way, like a piece of garbage, because that's what they both are in my eyes now. They thought they could just walk away with everything, but they underestimated how far I was willing to go to protect what was mine. This whole ordeal has changed me, no doubt. I've become more cautious, more wary of the people around me, but I've also become more self-aware. I see now that trust is earned, not given blindly. I've learned to listen to my instincts and to never ignore the signs of trouble. And above all, I've learned that no matter how much someone betrays you, you can pick yourself up and move forward. Life doesn't stop just because someone tries to tear you down. Sometimes, you just have to fight harder to rebuild what's broken. 2. Anyone else out there going through something similar, trust me when I say you're not alone. It hurts like hell at first, but you do come out stronger. Get your evidence, stay calm, and fight for what's yours. Never let anyone steal your peace or your dignity. The pain will fade, but the lessons stay with you. And in the end, the only thing that truly matters is your own strength to carry on, even after the worst betrayals. I've learned that the hard way, but I'm grateful for it. Because now, I finally feel like I can breathe again, like I can start over. And that's all I ever wanted.